This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
Tech Thursday is proudly brought to you by Altron, technology partners in your digital transformation journey. For more information, visit altron.com. Altron, there when it matters.
There is no denying that the shift from analog to digital is changing every aspect of how people communicate and engage, from going to shopping malls to online shopping, from taxi cabs to e-hailing services like Uber, and now from phone calls to messaging. It's clear that consumer communication preferences have changed and evolved quite dramatically over the past decade alone. Darryl joins us tonight to speak about how artificial intelligence-driven conversational experience solutions can help organizations transform their customer experience. Darryl Marcus is the head of business development and CX enabling technology at Altron Bytes People Solutions. Good evening, Darryl.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
It's quite a mouthful there of a position. Sorry about that. So what is conversational AI and how is conversational AI transforming the customer experience, Darryl?
Yeah, great. Well, let me unpack that for you. I think, first of all, conversational AI is a term we use today in line with things like conversational commerce, conversational experiences. And essentially what it is, it's a term that refers to the use of things like chat, messaging, chatbots, and artificial intelligence to really automate conversations and create convenient and digital conversations at scale, hyper-personalized conversations. I think in essence, when we unpack conversational AI and customer experience, we need to take a step back and look at how the customer has changed today. Yeah. And the consumer today is a very different animal. We spend our lives in messaging. I think if look at 90% of our conversations and interactions today happen in digital channels.
Sadly.
So conversational AI is really gives the ability to the enterprise to engage with their consumer in today's leading messaging channels, just the way we would communicate with family and friends, using things like WhatsApp. Historically, we forced the consumer into channels like the telephone. The consumer today is playing in that digital world, and we can now engage with that consumer in those messaging channels.
I mean, you mentioned this conversational AI is a term that refers to chat and messaging, but also chatbots and AI. What are your thoughts on these technology buzzwords?
Yeah, that's another great question. And I think, very often we look at technology for the sake of technology, and we often take a step back and we get caught up in a buzzword or a hype. And, if one looks at chatbots and artificial AI, they're terms today that are ubiquitous. They're all around us. You can't really pick up a magazine or a newspaper today without hearing the term artificial intelligence or chatbot. But I think there are technologies that are not going to go away. I think, as enterprises today, we need to look at what problems we're solving for and how best to use these technologies. So in my world, I always look and say, well, let's look at the conversation. Let's move away from buzzwords. Let's actually look at solving real world problems and how do we use these technologies to automate conversations and bring in automation and, as I mentioned earlier, drive these, convenient and personalized conversations at scale.
When it comes to the usage of these channels, how does an enterprise drive adoption and, as you said, scale?
All right, so that's another great question. And, there's that old movie called If You Build It, They Will Come. And unfortunately, what we've realized with a lot of self-service channels is the consumer isn't aware of them. I think, companies that are moving into this realm are realizing that you have to have some sort of proactive communication to move that consumer from your traditional channels, like a call center, into some of the digital channels. So today we talk about something, called IVR deflection, which has the ability to move a consumer who's phoning a call center who may be waiting in a queue to offer them the option of actually continuing their conversation in a digital channel like WhatsApp. For the same token, many contact centers don't run 24/7. Today's consumer often works in what are called margins or windows, and a lot of people's windows actually happen after hours, which unfortunately isn't when you can engage with an enterprise. So things like IVR deflection essentially move your customer experience, into a 24/7 world where that consumer can now start a customer experience in a contact center, but very quickly move into WhatsApp, which is an asynchronous, two-way, persistent conversation which never really sleeps. On top of that, critically important today is the fact that conversational AI, or what we refer to conversational commerce, is two-way asynchronous communication. So you have the ability today to use proactive communication to message into some of the channels like WhatsApp and engage the consumer proactively, as opposed to waiting for the consumer to reach out to an enterprise. You can proactively engage with that consumer and create that two-way asynchronous communication channel back.
I've experienced that switch you're talking about right now, where I've called into a call center and then I was offered the opportunity to go into WhatsApp, and I did take the opportunity. But I guess it was still the company. I forget the company I was dealing with. They weren't was the question I asked on WhatsApp. They weren't able to answer. So that's still, I guess, teething problems there, right?
Well, you've touched on a little concept that's very close to my heart. And you asked me about the buzzwords with regards to artificial intelligence and chatbots. And I think what you said now leads into, I suppose my take on how best to use their technologies. So there's an adage going around where everyone's saying AI is going to take over our jobs and take over the world. I'll pause for a second. Gartner predicted last year that by 2020, 85% of our conversations will happen with a chatbot. Well, we're in 2020, and I don't know about you, but I certainly haven't had 85% of my comms today handled by automation or a chatbot per se. So I fundamentally believe that the future of these technologies and things like conversational AI and AI itself is to find the balance between the human and the AI. Yeah. In fact, I like to call it the human AI tango. I think AI is at a nascent state at the moment.
I think the human and AI tango. Yeah, they definitely.
I live by that.
Yeah,
I live by the human AI tango. Yeah. I believe that AI will get to a point where it'll really be able to automate a lot of what we're trying to do. But at the end of the day, when it comes to customer experience, I need to resolve a query, and if the chatbot, which is a robotic process, can't do it, let me fall back to a human being that can. Yeah. So I talk about the human AI tango, and essentially what I'm saying is have the ability to move a consumer from an automation into a live human being, resolve the consumer's query, and if need be, can always move that consumer back into an automated environment. But the human element in the human AI tango and in conversational AI, I believe, is fundamentally important.
Yeah, but I guess just in my experience, it would have been much more helpful if the AI couldn't answer my query on WhatsApp, that it immediately said, okay, cool, we'll call you back. So then it's back to that tango you're talking about.
Well, right? not even call back. Yeah. You have the ability now for the agent. When we talk about conversational AI and we're talking about communicating at scale, is for the agent to communicate with you using the WhatsApp channel. So actually moving from a voice-based interaction to a digital interaction using WhatsApp. Yeah. What you'll probably find in time is you'll stop using contact centers and probably stick to the WhatsApp channel because of it's a persistent conversation. So you don't work in margins. When it comes to WhatsApp, you have this ability to start a conversation today, continue that thread for a day, 2 days, even a week. Yeah. But the conversation always exists. There's always a history, there's always a thread, you never have to start again. And again, it might be a case of working in the margin where, being on a telephone is a one-to-one relationship. It works what we call a session. Whereas working in a WhatsApp world, in persistent messaging, that conversation can continue throughout the day in shorter margins, but never lose the context of the conversation.
Which I guess brings me to my next question. What does this all mean for contact centers as we know them and use them today?
So contact centers, as we know them, are changing fundamentally. As we mentioned, the consumer needs to change fundamentally. The consumers change. The consumer is no longer using the telephone as a channel. Yeah. We're seeing messaging coming to the fore. We're seeing the consumer spending 80 to 90% of their time in digital channels like messaging. So the contact center today is moving from a synchronous environment with a one-to-one relationship into an asynchronous environment with the ability to engage their consumer in today's leading messaging channels. So some of the metrics that we used to use in contact centers are no longer really valid. We talk about customer journeys and we talk about first contact resolution. Well, how do you measure first contact resolution when your customer journey could start in a myriad of digital channels like a website, in-app messaging, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Apple Business Chat, Google RCS, Instagram, Twitter. Those are all channels where the consumer journey may start. It may end up in a contact center because they can't resolve their query in those channels. But at that point, it's certainly not my first engagement in my journey. It's potentially my last resort to try and get my conversation resolved. In the same breath, having the ability to engage with the consumer in a messaging channel and create two-way asynchronous persistent conversations also changes the metrics that we use in the contact center and how we need to engage with that consumer. Because the consumer now has messaging available 24/7, which also now sort of changes this way we want to structure our contact centers to service that particular customer who may actually come at us 24 hours a day through messaging channels.
And finally, Darryl, before I let you leave, what are some of the benefits that can be achieved, I guess, by organizations adopting and embracing conversational AI?
Oh, that's another great question. And who would have a conversation if there's no ROI or value on the back of it? So there's two ways to look at this. And I'll start off with, the the value that this can drive towards the organization, the enterprise that adopts conversational AI. And we're seeing a huge increase in, agent efficiency, moving from a one-to-one world into a world where the agent can handle multiple concurrent conversations, in parallel. For the same token, we're seeing the ability to really drive customer satisfaction because we're engaging with that consumer in their channel of choice. For example, WhatsApp in South Africa is the game changer. We know that the consumer's there. We're seeing a big reduction in the cost to serve because we're able to do a lot more with a lot less people. And having the ability to now engage with that consumer, we're seeing a big increase in sales conversions, driving actual sales because of the ability to engage and converse in real time. But I think the piece of me that I'm really passionate about is let's put ourselves back in the consumer's shoes. And we talk about an ROI and we look at what is the impact and benefits of these things. But the benefit actually, a lot of it is back to the consumer. The consumer now has the ability to engage with the enterprise in their time, in their space, and very importantly, again, in their channel of choice, like WhatsApp. As you mentioned earlier, and you said you start a conversation in WhatsApp and have to finish it in, the telephone call. Well, the ability for me as a consumer to engage in WhatsApp and continue the conversation in WhatsApp has got a huge impact on how I feel about organizations and essentially my customer satisfaction and importantly, the loyalty that I have to enterprises today. I personally, as a consumer, I'm driven by the ability to engage in fast, easy, convenient channels that make sense to me. And I think conversational AI and messaging doesn't just have an impact on the business and the enterprise. It has a big impact on how the consumer will view that enterprise.
All right. No, thank you very much for your time this evening, for joining and coming to the studio. Thank you so much. That was Darryl Marcus. He's the head of business development and CX enabling technology at Altron Bytes People Solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tech Thursday was proudly brought to you by Altron, technology partners in your digital transformation journey. For more information, visit altron.com. Altron, there when it matters.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.